Who are you? Not the role, not the personality, not the version of you that others admire or depend on, but the you beneath all that. The one who's been watching quietly from the background as your life unfolded around performances, obligations, and masks. The one who never stopped whispering, "This isn't me." Carl Jung believed that most people never meet their true self. Not because they're incapable, but because they're afraid. Afraid of what they'll lose. Afraid of what they'll have to unlearn. Afraid that, deep down, they've spent years building a life that doesn't belong to them. But here's the truth. You are not your persona. You are not your past. You are not your trauma, your resume, or your reputation. You are something older, something deeper, something whole, just beneath the surface. And this journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the one you were always meant to be. You were not born to perform, but very early on, you learned that certain parts of you were more acceptable than others. You learned which emotions were safe to express, which desires made people uncomfortable, which truths could get you punished or abandoned. So you adapted. You edited yourself. You learned to wear a face the world could accept. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the socially acceptable identity you craft to survive in a world that demands performance over presence. It's not fake, it's functional. But the danger comes when you forget. It's not you. The persona helps you navigate society, but it is not the self. It is a survival strategy. And every day you live only through the mask, your true self fades further into the background, until one day you can't tell where the mask ends and you begin. There's a specific kind of ache that comes when you've been disconnected from yourself for too long. It's not depression, it's not anxiety, it's a spiritual homesickness, a feeling that no matter how much you achieve, how many people love you, how together your life looks on the outside, something essential is missing. You wake up each day and feel like you're living a story someone else wrote for you. Your voice feels distant. Your desires feel unclear. And even your joy feels like it's wearing someone else's clothes. This is the soul's signal. You've drifted too far from your center, and it's time to come home. Carl Jung's concept of the self is not the ego. It's not your image, your job, or your traits. The self is the totality of who you are. The conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, the divine and the animal, the becoming and the already whole. It is the source beneath the surface. It's what you are when you stop performing. It's the version of you that doesn't need to be explained, improved, or earned. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. But to do that, you must first see how far you've strayed. And that means facing what Jung called the tension between the opposites, who you pretend to be versus who you are, what you want, versus what you settle for, who others see, versus the truth no one knows. That tension is not a sign of failure. It's the starting point of awakening. Here's the paradox. Society teaches you how to succeed, not how to be whole. It tells you how to gain approval, how to climb the ladder, how to perform confidence, resilience, positivity. But no one teaches you how to face your grief, your rage, your doubts, your unbearable longing to live a life that actually feels like yours. So you learn to fake it, to polish the persona, to become liked instead of known. And the more the world rewards the version of you that isn't fully real, the harder it becomes to return. Because what happens if you stop performing? Will they still love you? Will anything remain? This is the fear that keeps most people asleep. If I take off the mask, will I disappear? Jung's answer? No. You will finally appear. If the persona is the mask you show the world, then the shadow is everything you've hidden to keep that mask intact. The anger you weren't allowed to express, the needs you were told were too much, the instincts you learned to silence, the dreams you abandoned because someone laughed. But here's what Jung knew. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It moves underground. It becomes the shadow, and it continues to shape your life without your awareness. You think your personality is who you are, but much of it is simply a reaction to what you've tried to keep buried. That's why finding your true self doesn't start with affirmations, visualization, or aesthetic rituals. It starts with this question: what part of me have I exiled to survive? Because the true self is not all light. It's what emerges when light and shadow are finally allowed to sit at the same table. You don't become the self by creating it. You become the self by integrating what's always been there. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by confronting and embracing every part of yourself. Your wounds, your projections, your patterns, your instincts, your hidden desires. Not to fix them, not to eliminate them, but to reclaim them. Because the self isn't a fantasy. It's what's left when you stop pretending to be less than you are. Let's be honest. This journey will cost you. You may lose people. You may disappoint expectations. You may no longer fit in the places that used to feel safe. Because when you start walking toward the truth of who you are, everything built on your performance starts to shake. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And the greatest pain often comes not from what we lose, but from what we realize we never truly wanted in the first place. That job, that version of success, that relationship we kept alive because it mirrored our persona, not our soul. To find your true self, you must grieve the version of you that settled for being liked over being real, and you must risk the emptiness that follows before the new wholeness can arrive. You won't find yourself in a single moment. It won't come through a perfect book or the right teacher. But you'll know it's happening when these shifts begin. You start saying no without explanation. You stop chasing people who never see you. You feel less positive and more present. Your desires return, strange, raw, powerful. You begin grieving, not just what happened to you, but who you became because of it. Silence feels less like loneliness and more like a homecoming. These are not symptoms of falling apart. They are signs of waking up. And when they come, don't rush to fix them. Stay, because the self reveals itself slowly in the quiet that follows your decision to stop performing. Carl Jung didn't offer a shortcut. He offered a path, winding, slow, and often painful. But it's the only one that leads home. This path is called individuation, and it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming yourself. Individuation asks you to dismantle inherited identities, integrate your unconscious drives, question your roles, reclaim your instincts, and walk through life as someone internally unified, even if the external world no longer understands you. The self isn't a product, it's a process. And that process unfolds not through achievements, but through awareness. You begin to notice the habits that numb you, the masks that protect you, the relationships that reflect only your persona, not your truth. And one by one, you begin to let them go. Not out of bitterness, but because you no longer need them to survive. You're no longer piecing yourself together through performance. You're remembering that you were never broken to begin with. If you want to find yourself, you have to give up the version of life that depended on your absence, the comfort of fitting in, the thrill of being needed, the false peace that came from never being questioned. You have to risk being seen differently, losing the story you told about your own strength, disappointing those who depended on your silence. Because the true self doesn't perform in exchange for safety. It doesn't shapeshift to keep peace. It doesn't whisper when it wants to roar. And it doesn't stay small to soothe the insecurity of others. When you start walking toward the self, your life may begin to unravel. But that unraveling is sacred. It means the fabric of illusion is falling apart. And in the space where the mask collapses, the real you begins to breathe again. Most people live as an image. They curate their lives like a profile, selective, surface level, and edited for approval. But the self doesn't care about being curated. It cares about being true. And once you've tasted truth, you'll never want to return to image. You'll find yourself less concerned with being impressive and more concerned with being honest. You'll feel less urgency to be understood and more devotion to being in alignment. You'll start choosing depth over comfort, integrity over popularity, and clarity over consensus. This is when you'll know the self is no longer something you're searching for. It's something you're becoming, moment by moment. There's a silence that comes when you stop playing your old roles. People fall away. The world no longer recognizes you. Even you might struggle to understand who you're becoming. This is the loneliness of no longer being able to lie to yourself. But don't confuse that loneliness with loss. It's not that you've been abandoned. It's that you finally abandoned everything that wasn't built in truth. Carl Jung warned that the path to the self is not walked in crowds. It's walked in quiet rebellion against everything that made you forget who you are. So if you feel alone, keep walking. That silence is not emptiness, it's integration. And it's where the self begins to arrive. Finding your true self is only the beginning. Now comes the deeper challenge, living from it. Because the mask will still call you back. The world will still tempt you to shrink. Your nervous system will still flinch when you're asked to show up without armor. But this is where you begin again. Every day you're given a choice. To speak with honesty, even if your voice shakes. To slow down when the world says, hurry. To choose your own rhythm, your own values, your own path, even if no one claps for it. Living from the self doesn't mean perfection. It means congruence. Your inner world and outer world begin to align, and when they don't, you notice it instantly, because the self refuses to be silenced anymore. There will be days you want to go back to ease, back to autopilot, back to the performance that once made life smoother. That's normal, but the difference now is this. You've tasted wholeness. You've glimpsed the clarity that comes from no longer negotiating your worth. And now, even when you fall back into old habits, you return faster. You don't shame yourself. You remember yourself. And that remembering becomes your compass. Jung believed the self is always speaking, through dreams, intuition, instinct, silence. You don't have to force it. You have to listen. And in that listening, you'll keep rebuilding a life that fits your soul, not just your story. The world taught you to forget. It taught you how to dress, speak, work, smile, perform. It taught you how to repress what's wild and perform what's polished. But it never taught you how to come back. That's what you're doing now. This isn't a journey of becoming. It's a journey of unbecoming everything that was never truly yours. And as the layers fall away, the conditioning, the roles, the fear, what's left isn't something new. It's something ancient. It's the self that was always there beneath the noise, waiting, watching, calling, and now, answering. You don't arrive at the self, you remember it. And then, You return to it again and again and again, through choices, through solitude, through the courage to disappoint, through the sacred discomfort of living your truth. This is not a one-time awakening. It's a lifelong practice. And every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, you get closer. Every time you feel the mask and say, "Not today," you get freer. And every time you stand in your truth, even when your voice trembles, you become a little more whole. This is what it means to find yourself. Not to escape your life, but to finally inhabit it fully. If something inside you stirred, if a part of you has been quietly waiting to come home, leave a comment. What part of your true self are you ready to reclaim? What have you been hiding that's finally ready to be seen? And if you're walking the path of awareness, inner sovereignty, and integration, subscribe. This isn't a trend, it's a return. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.